Welcome back to episode 21 of the Service Design Podcast. This is the second episode in a series in which we speak to the winners of the Service Design Awards. Today, we'll be talking to Ella Walding, who won the Service Design Student Award for her graduation projects at RCA London. Together with the government of Malta, she developed a set of service design tools aimed to create change in the organisation. In the meantime, Ella started working at Innovation Unit in the UK. And don't forget, you can also have a chance to win a Service Design Award. Submissions will be opening up soon. Enjoy the episode. So we're speaking to Ella Walding. Hi, Ella.
Hello.
And we're speaking to you because you were one of the winners of the Service Design Awards in Madrid at the end of last year. So congratulations on that. We're going to ask you. We're going to ask you all about your project. But before we get into that, could you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, sure. So my name is Ella Walding and I'm a service designer at the Innovation Unit in the UK. I'm not sure if you've heard of us.
No, could you please elaborate?
Yes, sure. So we are a not-for-profit. We do a lot of work across the public and the social sector to find new and innovative solutions to complex social challenges.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What kind of challenges did you already tackle?
Well, I can give you an idea of some of the projects I'm working on at the moment. So I've just finished a project that's been looking at how to improve end-of-life care, and that involved designing a new service for people who are caring for somebody at the end of their life. Also currently working to redesign children's services in Wigan, implementing a new model there called No Wrong Door that creates a wraparound service for young people. And I've just started a new project for the Learning and Work Institute in partnership with the Department of Work and Pensions to design a service for people receiving employment support allowance to look at how they can not only be helped to find employment, but also at how to improve their health and their well-being.
Okay, that all sounds really interesting. But of course, we would like to know a little bit more about the project that you won the award for.
Yes.
Could you also introduce us a little bit to what you did there?
Yeah, sure. So the award was completed as part of my MA in service design at the Royal College of Art. And the project was for the government of Malta to help them with a new initiative that they'd created called servizz.gov, which basically aims to provide citizens with a single point of contact for all public services. So the idea behind servizz.gov is that rather than a citizen having to travel to multiple places, they can access all public services through one place. So it can be accessed through physical hubs, a call centre, an app and a website. And the aim of the project was to improve the process of integrating servizz.gov across 250 government departments. So in order to do this, I undertook research to see how it could be improved. And the research showed that although many customers were really satisfied with the service and staff really believed in it, some staff and customers still had a negative experience because the customer journey could be quite disjointed. And it was almost as if they were separately just trying to add additional functionality onto existing departments rather than collectively thinking about how they could work together to make this a seamless experience for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. So we held workshops with staff across government to present back the findings and explore what could be done differently. And 3 long-term solutions were created. So the first of these was a clear strategy for the future of service gov to steer the amount and the pace of future integration. The second solution was a balanced scorecard of performance measures to ensure a richer way of measuring progression towards the overall vision. So we actually created a new performance framework to balance out the different elements of the service and to help staff understand the journey towards excellence. And finally, we created a toolkit, which is the new method of creating any change in the servizz.gov process. The idea is that any staff member has the power to suggest a change at any time. And then this toolkit could be used to identify a process for implementing change using both service design and project management tools. We ran a pilot to test the toolkit in practice with the housing department, and it's now gone on to be used with several other departments, and the other solutions as well have been fully accepted and implemented.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about this performance framework. Could you tell a little bit more about, how does that work? What does it consist of?
So we basically created a steering wheel to balance out the different elements of the service. And then each segment of that wheel can be broken down into exactly what's being measured, the source of the data, the overall target, and a mission statement. And then we also combine that with a maturity model to help staff understand, the journey that need to be taken. And what's quite exciting about it is that it's leading the servizz.gov team to do things that they've never done before. So, for example, self-assessments, a staff survey, staff and customer interviews, and even a monthly newsletter.
Okay, you said you helped the servizz.gov team with that, but who are these people? Who are the people who are in the servizz.gov team?
So they have like a servizz.gov head office that's actually based in the government of Malta, and they report directly to the permanent secretary for strategy and implementation. So they're the sort of team that oversee the whole service. And then you have the sort of frontline staff who work in the various different hubs, the one-stop shops that work directly with the customers. And then they have a call center as well that they outsource.
Are there any designers in this team, or is it more like people who have been working there for a really long time and who now decided to shift towards this focus?
Yeah, so no designers. It was actually the first time that the government of Malta has ever been introduced to service design. And so it was quite a novel experience, learning about design and then working in a new way for the first time. So yes, the service only was put into place 2 years ago. So it was a combination of people who'd worked in government before and then new employees from various different backgrounds. But yeah, design was a new thing in the picture.
How did you get to work with government in Malta in the first place?
Yes, a good question. So I contacted them. I was quite keen to do a project that may change its scale. And my parents actually live in Malta for half the year, so I knew I could stay with them. And it just seemed like a nice idea to do a project somewhere sunny and get away from the grey skies of England.
Yeah.
Nice. You also talked about a toolkit that you made for the staff members, so everyone can suggest a change that they would like to make. But how does that work in practice? What can they do if they have a good idea?
Yeah, okay, so really good question. So the idea is that whoever you are as a staff member, you can just request a change, and it gives people permission to say that something isn't working. And then that would go through to the servizz.gov head office, and then they would use this toolkit to evaluate and implement those changes. So it almost takes people through a sort of double diamond type model, to create change. So to give you some examples of some of the tools, some are critical, like meeting to identify a problem, analysing risks, or planning and evaluating solutions, whereas others are optional, like discovery and develop, interviews and workshops, prototyping and piloting of solutions, or activities for really embedding change in the organisation. So ultimately, it's up to those using it to decide exactly which tools to use. But the idea is that, servizz.gov head office would work with the relevant department, and then they would undertake this process together.
And are these tools that can be used without any training, or do you provide an introduction to the toolkit first?
Yes, so I worked with the servizz.gov head office to get them used to all of these tools, and then the training was then going out and using them in practice as part of the pilot with the housing department. But they've been made in such a way that you don't need to be an expert to use them, I suppose. And I think sometimes in service design, we're quite precious about our tools. And actually, I really see the value in helping organizations to use them themselves and feel comfortable with the process.
So this was it your graduation project, or was it?
Yes, it was my final project.
Yeah, you did it all by yourself then, I suppose, as a student. But who did you collaborate with in the government? Who did you work together with?
So my client was the permanent secretary of strategy and implementation, who the servizz.gov head office report to. But I worked very closely with the servizz.gov head office, including, the person who heads up that team. I work really closely with him and his team, which is why the project was successful. It was wonderful to collaborate with them, and to go through the process together rather than taking things away, doing it and coming back.
What do you think is the biggest change that your project made?
It's a good question. I think really it was a change in culture. The culture before was perhaps quite top down, and the project tried to design new solutions that brought teams together and introduced more opportunities for feedback and for communication, to build relationships across departments and between staff and customers. And I think that's gone on to have a really big impact and change behaviour.
As you said, there's this performance framework. Are there any measurements already where you can see the impact that some changes have had?
Yeah, good question. I haven't seen any metrics, so I can't give you an answer on that. But that is the way of a more tangible way of measuring impact. But yes, I sadly have no statistics for you.
You have experience as a citizen in Britain, of course. What would you say are differences between the government there and in Malta, or is it kind of the same?
It's quite different. Malta is very interesting because it's an incredibly small country, and they have this absolutely incredible sense of community, and everybody knows each other. So things work a little differently, and it's very much based on relationships and who you know. However, saying that, the Maltese government model was based on the UK government, and despite being so small, they still have 250 departments and over 1,000 services. So it was still perhaps just as hard to create change there as it is working in England.
Well, I can imagine the scale does make a difference in getting things implemented. It's a smaller scale that you need to change at least.
Yeah, true.
So if you think about the process you went through for this project, is there something that you would have done differently, something that you didn't expect that it would turn out like that, and that you thought later, I should have done it in a different way?
Yes. So I think it comes back to this, probably that culture point I made before, because that really was the biggest challenge, was to try and change the culture. So maybe I might just expand a little to give you some context. So the old culture was very much this sort of, classic government culture of top down. There are processes and procedures that people need to follow efficiently, etc. And the desired culture was very much one of, more collaborative, where you see staff as people with ideas and agency and everything else. And I think a really good metaphor for this is from Professor Jake Chapman, who gives a metaphor which I think is pretty apt. So he describes making change in a complex system to be the difference of throwing a stone and throwing a live bird. So he says the trajectory of a stone can be calculated very precisely using the laws of mechanics, but the trajectory of a bird cannot be calculated in the same way because the bird has agency, so you can't predict where it will fly. So the temptation of an organization is to clip the bird's wings, tie it to a rock, and then throw it. And then the bird will probably land where you want it to, but its capabilities have been completely destroyed. So this really was what was happening there. So to give you an example, customers had asked for a really timely service, and of course the response was introduce targets to get people's cases dealt with within a certain amount of time. Now, some departments weren't able to meet these time limits, and if you look at this from a process perspective, you might be inclined to increase the targets and make them stricter and send email reminders to say that the targets were due soon. And this is exactly what they did. But if you look at it from a systems perspective and a person's perspective, you would find one person sitting at the other end of a computer that gets 200 plus emails a day that she has to answer. And she either has to answer them when she goes on leave or she can't cope when she comes back. And so this was the task to try and change this culture. And of course, we changed this specific situation, but that wasn't really changing the belief and the ways of working that were, underpinning it. So how do you do that? And I explain this theory in various presentations to different levels of top management, and perhaps naively assumed that this might be a breakthrough moment, and even asked a very influential member of management to introduce a workshop and say that the culture would be different. But of course, a presentation isn't really going to change anybody's mind. So in the end, I decided that actually changing people's behaviour was too hard, and instead try to design solutions that would change behaviour. So some of these things I was saying before, building in more communication, more opportunities for feedback, thank you emails, etc. And I suppose hopefully this is happening slowly, but I think if I could do it differently, what would I do? I think probably I shouldn't have given up so quickly, and perhaps if I could have shifted other people's minds, and probably should have helped the servizz.gov team to develop a plan for culture change, and a roadmap for the future of how things should be different. So yeah, I think that would have been really helpful.
I think that is one of the hardest things to do, changing a culture of an organization, and especially in government, you indeed often see it's almost you have to turn it upside down. I saw one of your quotes is that there was too much push, not enough pull. Turning that upside down really is very hard, and it's not something you can just do with presentations and changing some individuals' minds. It often is very helpful, though, if some of top management is all for the change. you mentioned there was at least one person. Was the top level interested in becoming more of a pull organization?
Yes, perhaps not to the extent that I would have hoped they would.
Then that does become a big challenge if you need to.
Yes. Then what do you do? That's the question.
You have to transform their minds.
Yeah, of course, it's also a really long process to make those changes. And I think it's interesting that you say that instead of giving presentation that the culture needs to change, that you started making small, like the toolkit or small things that could change some behavior at least, or some mindsets at certain topics. And I think by introducing those kind of things over time, it can make a very big impact in the end.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the strategy I try to go for. So even little things like, having a target for how much recognition is given, for example. Before, there wasn't really any recognition in the system before. And then if you're actually building that in, and then people start performing better, and people feel more valued, and then people see the impact, then people are inclined to start, keep doing it. So yes, hopefully over time, as you say, that will be the case.
Yeah, and I think the idea of giving everyone the opportunity to suggest some improvements is a very interesting one, because you often see that that is really a problem in some cultures, that people think their ideas are not valued, or that the system just doesn't allow those ideas to end up with the people who can actually change something. But I think that would be interesting for a lot of different organizations as well, not only in governmental institutions, but in a lot of big organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the aim, to just try and design in learning loops.
I'm a bit curious about something. So I saw that you studied drama before you got into service design. How did you get to making this transition? How did you get into service design?
Yes, a good question. Yes, well, I never really wanted to be an actress. I think I just had a particularly inspiring drama teacher at college, which is how I ended up being a drama student. But actually, I really enjoyed it, and it was during that degree that I first became aware of discourse, and I found it incredibly interesting, and I really enjoyed that theatre could disturb people's convictions, but I think what drama does do, or is to expose the assumptions underlying the discourse. But what it doesn't do is develop counter narratives that can really lead to real change. And I was looking for a practice and a profession that met this need. And then when I left, I actually met somebody who was a service designer, and they described their job to me. And I remember somebody telling me once, not every job can be a 10 out of 10. If it's a 7 out of 10 or above, then you need to go for it. And she described this job, and I thought, you know what, that is a 10 out of 10. So went for it, and I've never looked back.
And do you still use some of the skills that you learned in your drama education in your service design life?
Probably not as much as I should, but some things, yes. I think a big part of service design is storytelling, really, and so drama just had a whole range of skills in order to do that. And then I think in prototyping, doing things like role play can also be really valuable. So yes, I am using the skills, but probably I could do more.
I think one thing I noticed when at the conference, talking to people about your presentation, one thing people are all agreeing on is that you gave a very, very solid presentation. I'm wondering perhaps some of your drama background helped in telling your story indeed very clearly.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Although I think I have to give the credit to the Royal College of Art there, actually. One of the biggest skills they gave me was to deliver an excellent presentation. I had a particular tutor who was very particular about the slides you show and the order you tell them in and how you tell an excellent story, and it's really stayed with me. So yeah, I would put that to them.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the study that you followed at the Royal College of Art? What kind of courses did you have there, or what kind of skills did you gain?
So it was a really excellent course, actually, and I probably didn't realise how excellent it was until recently, when I was looking at a service to redesign education, and there was a whole list of what education should have, and I looked down this list and thought, oh my gosh, every one of these applies to the Royal College of Art, and it was just a very a practical course. From day one, you were going out and delivering real projects for real clients, and you had the opportunity to find your own clients, and they really supported you to be able to implement services and challenge you, and the theory was there, but it was completely tied in to the practical side. So yes, I really, really enjoyed it. It was really
What was your favorite course?
Well, I did really enjoy this project with the government of Malta. That perhaps was my favourite. But two other that stand out is a project I did for a school just down the road from me, who were in a very precarious situation, and supported them to stay open. And another really interesting project for the Shore Trust to support people receiving employment support allowance, which involved reshifting the core vision of their organisation. So yeah, too many to choose from.
And how many students were there in your year graduating?
30.
And do you have a bit of an idea which directions they all went?
Yes, it's a complete mix. Somebody's working for Macmillan, somebody's working for the Ministry of Justice, McKinsey. Some people have gone more down the commercial route into the private sector. Others have stayed in the public sector. It was a very international course as well, so lots of people have gone back to the countries that they came from, and spreading service design around the world. So yeah, a real mix. Yeah.
Okay, so you won this service design award. What does it mean to you? Did it change something for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, it's an honour to have your work considered as a world best case study for first class design. That's incredible, and the whole experience of doing the project, winning the award, meeting the other designers has been really, really enjoyable. But I think what's also very nice is how much it meant to the government of Malta, and it's been shared very widely in their press. And as I said, it's the first time they've ever done a service design project, so it's just been a really wonderful experience to share this new way of working with somewhere new.
Do you think this award also helps the transformation in the government of Malta, making the change towards a pull government?
Yes, I hope so. And hopefully it's the first of many projects as well. And what was so nice is my client came to the Service Design Global Conference to see the award ceremony, and then heard all these fantastic presentations about what service design is. And he's now become very excited and wants to keep pursuing it. Do
you still have some contact with them? Like, do you know what's happening now, or which part of your projects they're really taking further and which one not? Or
yes, so I do still have contact with them. I haven't spoken to them very recently. Just after the awards was the last time, and I think the thing they're enjoying the most is the toolkit, which they're using across various different departments. I think they're on the 4th department that they're using it with now, and it's leading to big scale changes because they found a collaborative way to work together that works. So yes, it's exciting.
Do you think they will elaborate on that toolkit, or do you think they will build more of them? Or
I think that their next steps is that at the moment it's being championed by the servizz.gov head office, and I think they're as they're using it very frequently, they're struggling to manage it with their day job. So I think that they're bringing in an OD expert who's skilled in change management to champion its use and support the team. And then I think the next steps, once they've got a firm structure in place, they'll then start promoting its use more heavily across the organisation through roadshows, etc.
So do you have some tips for other service design students that are now that started their studies? Things that you learned during your study or things that you would have done differently?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the best tip I can give is to really work with the client so that they have ownership of your ideas. I just don't think it works creating something in isolation and then bringing it in at regular opportunities to show the client. I think it happens far too often in the student world and the professional world, actually. People want to show off their best work. But if you really want change to happen and to stick, then it really has to be the client doing it, to have them thinking about it. So I think if you can type up the Post-it notes together or ask them what they think the insights are and to co-design the solutions and work through the development of them together, then it has a much higher impact and a real, change in ownership. And probably also, I think it's worth being a bit cheeky and to say, don't be afraid to contact people you don't know. Ring people up, ask if you can interview them, run a project for them, work for them. People are so happy to help. And the worst case scenario, you'll just get a kind no.
Yeah, exactly. But I can imagine if you work in a governmental organization as a student and you're quite young and you're doing all these workshops with people who have been in that profession for maybe 30 or 40 years, you sometimes also get some more negative reactions. Or was that not the case in your project?
Yes, well, I mean, I suppose experience that particularly in the Government of Malta project. It's a very, the first workshop I did was with 30 heads of the various different departments, and it's a very, white male environment. And I think they probably were like, who's this young blonde girl coming in and telling us what to do? But I think, if you're confident in the service design process, then it's okay. And it's all right if people are a little bit surprised at you. And then by the time you've done your research and you have your insights and you're reflecting back a clear picture of the organization, people start to think, oh, actually, she's really got this. She understands what's going on. And people start to really work with you. So, yeah, I think believe in the process and all will be fine.
Actually, a skill of a service designer is that you have to trust the process and not be afraid for other people that are maybe older or more experienced to think that you're not.
Yes, I think so, because I think in some ways part of the power of service design is if you really believe in the process and you really believe that, you will be able to find some sort of solution. It might not be the final solution or, a magic solution that will solve everything, but you will go through a process that will take you that first step. If you really believe in that, then actually the people that you're working with believe in that. And all you really need is people to believe in a common vision and a belief that things will be different, and then everything else takes care of itself.
So I'm also curious to learn a little bit more about Innovation Unit, where you're working now. Could you tell us a bit about the team? How big is it? What does the team consist of? Which roles?
Yep. So we're 30 people. There are a small handful of service designers, and then you've got a whole range of people from a variety of different backgrounds. So people who specialize in change management, organizational development, anthropologists, and people who have a high degree of knowledge in various different parts of the public sector, like children's social care or mental health. So it's incredibly exciting because you've got such a diverse team with people with all this different knowledge and different skill sets. And yeah, it's really enjoyable to work together. And it's nice to be the person bringing the lens of service design, and to be working with people who aren't just service designers, and to be learning from all of their expertise.
And if you do a project, what does a team look like?
So it really depends on the size of the project. And I've only started in August, so I'm still relatively new. But so far in each project, I've been holding the service design hat and then working with other people from different specialties. There'll be a project lead who will, steer the project, and then the other team around supporting. And it's very collaborative, and everybody working in a collaborative way. It's not bringing different people in and out at different stages. You're a team and you work through the project together.
And does if you work on a project, how do you collaborate with the client? Do you make one team together, or do you have certain moments that you sit together, work together, or present some stuff? How does it normally go?
So again, it really depends on the client. There'll be a conversation at the beginning to see how they would best like to be worked with. And the ideal scenario is that you work with them as closely as possible. Sometimes it's a much shorter project and it's much easier to go away, do work and then meet at regular moments. But yeah, it's a negotiation at the beginning, absolutely.
Yeah, what kind of questions do you get from clients? Is it actual problems they come with or challenges they face? What do they ask you for?
It's a real mix, quite often research to get a better understanding of people's lived experience. We do a lot of helping clients to scale successful innovations. And yes, designing new services to overcome various challenges. So yeah, it's a real mix of everything.
What would be your dream project to work on?
Oh, good question. I would really love to redesign the prison system. I have a real deep belief of rehabilitation over punishment, and I don't think the model we have in England is as good as it could be compared to other countries like Norway or Holland.
That would be a really interesting project. I remember a conversation we had with some colleagues here as well, that would be a super interesting case to work on, especially because you will also work with people that you really are not familiar with what kind of situations they have been through, because we notice in some of our projects, for example, for education, we can still remember some of our own experiences. Or if we work for governments, we also, for some cities, we remember, we also have to ask for our passport. So we kind of can get inside of the heads of the users there. But I think a prison, it's such a totally different world that it would be a very interesting case to work for as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting that it's one of the very few services that isn't really designed for the user. Nobody is thinking about the user experience there. We're actually thinking about how to make the experience as horrid as possible, which is a bit bizarre when you stop and think about it.
Yeah, that's true, because of course, it's what you say, it's important that those people just get prepared again to become part of the real world again after they come outside this place where they're not really confronted with stuff that is going outside, and that they've been sometimes for 20 years in like an artificial world that is totally different from the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. We should maybe look for some clients there as well.
Yeah.
So what were the projects you said that you're working on at the moment at your current work?
So currently this service for Wigan. I mentioned for Children's Social Services in Wigan, which is helping them to scale an existing innovation called No Wrong Door, which is an asset-based care model that creates a wraparound service for young people. So they have a new role created called a key worker, who is the young person's advocate and always has them in mind, and is really there for them no matter what. And then you have a team with different specialities sitting around them that are now under one management umbrella, whereas before they would have been, linked to their various different departments. And then questions like whose responsibility is this, whose budget is this, all of those sorts of conversations are removed. A model I really believe in, and it's been a joy to help put it into place. And then also been doing some ethnographic research for Save the Children, to help them understand the lived experience of families living in poverty, to see if there's any additional opportunities for them to provide support. And also just started a new project for the Department of Work and Pensions, or the Learning and Work Institute, who's our direct client, to help them design a new service for people receiving employment support allowance, who are people with physical or mental health conditions. And it's a very exciting opportunity, because it's not just looking at how you can prepare people for work, but also considering people's health and looking at how you can improve their well-being. Yes.
Yeah. That all sounds indeed very, very interesting. Is a innovation unit looking for more service designers, perhaps among our listeners?
Yes, we're not hiring at this exact point, but I think we've always got our eyes out for new talent. And at some point, I'm not sure when, we will be hiring again. So yes, if you're really interested, do always feel free to get in touch.
Okay, that's great. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. It was really interesting hearing about your project and your thoughts on service design in general. Do you have anything you'd like to share with our listeners, and where can people find you if they want to get in touch or learn more about the project?
Yep. If people want to find out more, then feel free to visit my website, which is www.ellawalding.com. Walding spelled Walding. And there are more details there.
We'll make sure we add the link to servizz.gov.mt as well, so people can find the information that we talked about today. All right. Well, congratulations again on winning the award, and we wish you the best of luck in your future career.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
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 The Service Design Podcast was brought to you by the Service Design Network and Night Moves. For more information, previous episodes, or to join the conversation, please visit servizzdesignpodcast.com. For more information about the Service Design Network, visit service-design-network.org, and for Night Moves, visit nightmoves.be. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to this podcast. The intro and outro music is from If the Stars Grow Dim Tonight by Hydrogen Sea featuring I Will, I Swear. Until next time.